Good morning. Now a word from our sponsors. Gail's new video, take 2.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of Retail Resilient. We teach car dealers all over the country how to sell more cars and make more money using social media platforms. Like I said, who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Check us out at retailresilient.com or send us a message in the chat bar on the AutoHub show.
This is Barry Jordan from whitegloveperformancegroup.com. I'd like to take a few moments of your time to share how we can make you more profitable. Dealerships all over North America are using our cloud-based power dialing platform, Touchpoint, to manage their outbound sales-generating phone calls. With Touchpoint, your agents can make up to 50 calls an hour. Leave a voicemail, send an email with a link to a video or to your website, all with a click of the mouse. We specialize in empowering your teams to make the calls that make the sales. How can Touchpoint help you increase profit? Check us out, whitegloveperformancegroup.com.
Hi everyone, I'm John Latka from Automotive Business Solutions, where we help dealerships build more productive and proactive by appointment sales cultures through our Performance Management Partnership Program. So, if you want to increase your sales volume by 2 to 3 sales per month per salesperson, call our toll-free number, 877-708-8484 for a free consultation.
Thanks very much. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I thought I'd pick some different books this morning just because it was kind of interesting. So, 1001 Dream Cars You Must Drive Before You Die. Buy, Sell, Profit, Repeat, Trading Used Cars, 5 books in one, complete guide, and The Patron Saint of Used Cars Second Chances. So I'm not sure if they're interesting or not, but I thought they were interesting books. So there you go. And Jeff.
Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff here, joining you from a local Starbucks because I have an appointment in a minute. I had to run out, so I apologize for the reggae in the background. But so our disclaimer, as usual, is the opinions voiced here are those of our guests and not necessarily of us. And should they say anything controversial at all, it ain't on us.
Rock and roll. So today the show is about used car and used car predictions. So let's get into it. Jeff, go ahead.
So the used car prediction show, very interesting. Used cars is a big conversation point every day, and that's because most dealers don't have anything but used cars. But joining us today are 2 very knowledgeable people. First of all is Brent Seavey, the Director of Sales and Business Development North America at Accelerate, from that fine, looks like a very fancy vacation place, Naperville, Illinois in the background. Brent, say hi to our audience and tell us more about you, your company, and your connection to the used car world.
Yeah, that's actually the river behind, right next to my house behind me. I've got a nice little photo up there. But yes, I'm Brent Seavey. I spent many years in the automotive industry, probably too many years to recollect, about 25 years. I spent 4.5 years at Tesla. I helped to start the used car department at Tesla. We helped to set up all the processes and warranties and everything there, and kicked off that department, built it into about $1 billion monster, and then just prior to COVID, had enough and decided to bail on the industry. But now I am part of Accelerate and XCare. We provide extended warranties for EVs, solely for EVs, so Teslas and other pure battery electric vehicles. And by the way, I did notice one error, not error, but omission in your barn finds video there, and that is there was a 2020 Honda Civic was actually found that's worth about $40,000 if you believe the used car hype right now. So
you mean a 2002?
That was the best I had. Come on, I worked on that for a whole 3 minutes here.
Now I get it. My apologies. Yeah. That went right over my head.
Just pull the chips out of it. They're worth about 10 grand a piece, from what I understand.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? So But I understand that the Tesla's not having a lot of problems. That's probably because they own some chip factory somewhere.
Yeah, they actually got ahead of things a lot, and they did a lot of reprogramming of their vehicles to basically do a lot of the processing through other through programming means in their systems, and they are vertically integrated. So I think in the future you're going to see a lot of automakers kind of pulling back from suppliers and becoming more vertically integrated, at least for critical componentry like that. Because if COVID has taught us one thing, it's the more you control, the more you control your parts and your availability, the greater you can recover from stuff like this. So I think in a lot of ways there have been some good results come out of this for our business.
Well, and I think the Japanese manufacturers learned a little bit from 2011 after that tsunami and kind of diversified that a little bit, but now they're suffering too. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you being here. And our next guest needs no introduction for many of you, especially for us. When he first joined us, our first show with him a few months ago, I signed up for his newsletter. And wow, I got to tell you something. If his newsletter's anything, this guy knows used cars like you wouldn't believe. So joining us from St. Petersburg, Florida, at first I thought he was wearing a sweater, is Tommy Gibbs and Tommy Gibbs Training, Tommy Gibbs Used Car Guru. And Tommy, please introduce yourself and to our audience.
Hey, thanks a lot. I was a new car dealer for over 20 years. In the beginning, I had some really bad franchises, which forced us to get really, really good in used cars. And so then later on, I had some better franchises and cashed out about 20 years ago and went into the used car training and leadership part of the business. And also in a software company that we help dealers manage their inventory through something called lifecycle management. And we have a recon tool that's pretty cool that helps dealers manage their recon operation. So there you have it. About 20 years in retail and about 20 years doing what I'm doing now.
Terrific. Well, I got to tell you, it's certainly paying off for dealers now that know their used cars. Ian, take it over.
Yeah, question. This show is about predictions for used cars. For the short-term future, what would you have predicted at the time if the show was in January 2020? And let's start with Tommy.
Say that again I didn't quite catch what you said about January 2020.
This show is about predictions for used cars for the short-term future. What would you have predicted at the time if the show was in January 2020?
I would have thought things would be pretty normal back in January 2020. That was really before the pandemic had hit. So I would have seen maybe some normal growth, and the better dealers are going to grow a little better than some of the other dealers that are not so progressive or aggressive, and they would have been kind of flat line, but maybe a 10-15% growth for some people back in 2020. Would have never thought it would be what it is today.
Interesting.
And when I say growth, I'm talking about volume. Grosses would have been crappy like they were back then. Grosses wouldn't have gotten any better.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Brent, what do you think?
Well, back in early 2020, I actually was reading up on the fleet age in the United States, and the fleet age was actually at its oldest in probably 10 years. So if you would ask me that question at the beginning of last year, I would have told you that the prognosis for the year would be great, because the older the fleet age is, the more people have to replace their cars. So yeah, pre-pandemic, before everybody parked and started zooming their work, I would have said that things would be pretty strong. That having been said, the world did change, and people's work situations have changed, people's home situations have changed, and I mean, it's a different world now than it was then, isn't it?
Fantastic. Jeff?
That's for darn sure. It sure caught everybody by surprise. So Brent, you're an EV guy, an EV expert. So where is the market going in used EVs? I'm involved in a little used car lot, and we're looking at this, and we're kind of going, well, it's time we step into this. But you see a 2011 Nissan Leaf with 130,000 miles on it, and you're going, what should we do? So please tell us about that.
Well, I will preface this by saying that I'm in the EV space, but that basically means I'm in the Tesla space. I mean, there are some other EVs out there, but you know, the gorilla in the room is definitely Tesla. They've set the stage for all the other EV manufacturers and all the other OEMs that are stepping into the space. And I think it's important to note that one of the things that Tesla did was they decided early on to update their vehicles via software updates over the air. So I have a 2016 Model X. I've had 3 operating systems, about 10 updates to my vehicle over the course of my ownership of it. My car gets better all the time. And if you look at EVs are basically built to last an awful long time. There's not a lot of friction parts. There's about 20 friction points in your average EV. And so by virtue of that, having to replace an EV is something you don't have to do very often. Teslas are built to last for about 15 years or 500,000 miles. So the idea, there's kind of a not so subtle shift in the psychology of people that own these cars now, in that they're not in that typical 3 or 4 year, churn into something else. They have more of a long. I've had 53 cars and I've had my Model X for 4 years. Do the math. I'm not 200 years old. So the fact is, I don't keep cars this long, but yet I can't see a legit reason to replace my Model X. I love it. It's a fabulous car. It gets better all the time. Whenever they have an update, they send it to me over the air. So I think the used car space in general is going to have a lot longer cycle for the foreseeable future as things shift over more to EVs. But also as people are sitting at home and working from home and even downsizing to 1-car families, you're going to see a lot of people putting a lot less miles on their cars and having a lot less legitimate reasons to get into a new one. So I think the used car market's actually going to contract a little bit, and I think the new car market is basically going to recover, but it's not going to be a hockey stick recovery, because there still aren't a whole lot of people out there now that really seriously need to replace their cars. I think the EV space is going to grow exponentially, and I think ultimately it's going to overtake the ICE space by the end of this decade at the very latest.
It's a very interesting point. I've got to tell you, it never even occurred to me the fact that in the case of an EV, especially Teslas, these are our whole psychology as well. I got a car 4 or 5 years, I got to change it. Yeah. Because, and then you think about it for a minute, and you go with them, you go, well, because why?
Because why?
Nothing's going wrong. Yeah.
Well,
I've gone through 3 sets of tires. Of course, with Teslas, 22 sets of brakes. And Tommy, what's your position on this? You're on mute.
I know nothing about EVs, so I can't give you an opinion on an EV at all. I'm just in the dark on EVs, so I don't have an opinion on them.
Yeah, even as used vehicles.
Well, I think there's a demand there. I think if I was looking at an EV, the biggest problem I would have as a used car manager would be, what value do I put on this to make sure that I'm covered well and not going to have an issue down the road. And I think a lot of used car managers are going to be of that mindset. I think some of them are going to be scared of them, and they're going to sell them to people like Brent or someone that is in that business. I don't know.
Well, there's MMR on every Tesla, so you can definitely put yourself in a good place. I think the issue with Tesla, well, with EVs in general, and Tesla in specific, is having a warranty product to sell forward with them. Because let's face it, when somebody's sitting in F&I, they want a warranty, and that's what Xcare provides. So we can definitely assist with that. No shameless plug. Okay, I'm guilty, but yeah, a lot of used car managers they want a warranty product, because let's face it, if the gross is all in the front end, then you can just stock up with ICE cars out in front, right? But if you want gross on the back end as well, you need a warranty product. Call me.
Yeah, I think that warranty thing is a big thing. So yeah. I think you're in the right sector.
Yeah, we're definitely growing by leaps and bounds.
Footnote to our viewers: should any of you connect with Brent because of this show, the AutoHub show does get 5% royalty. Just kidding.
I'll send you a case of Labatt's.
There you go. When are you coming to Canada, though?
We do have our eyes on Canada. We're still rolling out in the U.S. We're still growing an awful lot in the U.S., but but Canada is definitely on our radar. We get a handful of requests every week from Canada, and it breaks my heart to say we're not there yet. But it's at the end of the day, when you go international, there's laws, compliance, and licensing and everything that goes along with that. But yes, we do have our eyes on the Great White North, and we'll be there as soon as we can.
Ian, take
I
over,
like that you
please.
got the reference. Very good.
And there's actually an interesting move there. I don't know if you know about the Steel Auto Group, but the Steel Auto Group just bought a used EV retail store or group or whatever. So they're expanding that model. So you will see more of these EV only used car franchises. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know, what do you think's going to happen when you look at trucks, imports, CPU, large SUVs in urban markets? I mean, what do you think is going to happen as we get into more and more of this just lack of inventory or lack of affordable inventory?
Is that for me or for Tommy?
Let's go for Tommy on that one.
I don't know. You mentioned SUVs, and I don't think their popularity is going anywhere anytime soon. I think the market's going to remain strong until you get a greater supply of new cars out there. Late model used cars, late model SUVs are going to still bring all the money until you get more vehicles in the marketplace. It's still a X number of people going to buy a new car or going to buy a car, and some of them are switching to used cars. And even before the shortage of new cars, a lot of your more astute buyers had come to grips with the fact that, man, this stuff's getting really expensive, and I can get a better value by buying a used car. And I think that mindset's going to continue no matter what happens out there.
And I know we were talking a little bit earlier, Tommy, about commission and salespeople and that kind of thing. Do you think it's too late to have that discussion with salespeople at the dealership level, as they've been conditioned to basically selling anything that's on the lot without a lot of effort?
I don't think it's ever too late to have that discussion. I mean, a dealer just has to decide how much pain they want to go through in making that big pay plan change. Again, even before the pandemic, we had moved to more of a one price mindset. We'd moved more to the CarMax business model, which I'm a big fan of. And so if you're a true one price dealer, you don't need to be paying on gross for sure. And so, it should be a volume based / salary type pay plan. But I don't think it's ever too late to have the discussion, but I think it's going to be a tough transition for some dealers to get there with what's been going on. It was tough before the pandemic and the issues we're dealing with. Now it's going to be even tougher.
Well, that's an interesting point. And actually, I know a couple of dealers that by accident, when the pandemic came, they went away from paying on gross because people needed to know that they were going to make some money. And I'm hoping they're staying smart and staying with that pay plan, and maybe adjusting it so that they go away from a gross plan, and it's a great way to move on. But so many of the others are just saying, okay, well, we're putting them back to gross because they got to make money, because they're not gonna go for more money if we don't pay them on gross.
Yeah, there's two keys to a volume-based pay plan. One, you either have to be a true 100% one-price dealer, you don't negotiate, or B, you got to have a really strong desk that's not going to give up. Because if you put a volume-based pay plan and you're still willing to negotiate, the salespeople are going to work you to death at the desk. So you've either got to have a really strong desk or be committed to true one price if you go down the volume based pay plan path.
Well, the fact is you need a strong desk no matter what, because even when they're on commission and they're getting the flat, and you're selling that whatever it may be that there's no money in, and if you just give in and blow it out, well, they're getting their flat, and they're working you for their flat commission anyways.
Well, it takes a whole, I'm such a fan of CarMax, but if you go and take a look at their business model, their managers aren't busy desking deals because they are a one price dealer. They're busy, I guess, helping to manage the salespeople and coach the salespeople, but they're not having to desk deals. So it's a different skill level that you need. You don't need that quote desk guy, desk gal that can pencil deals all day long. You're not dealing with that anymore. So again, there's so many advantages to going down that one price path.
That's a good point.
And Brent, obviously we got large SUVs, we got CPO, we got EVs, we got, you know, what do you think about, even EVs, especially higher mileage EVs? Like, do you feel the mileage is an issue on an EV like it would be on a regular, SUV or car?
I think that psychology is changing as people embrace more and more the fact that EVs are designed to last a lot longer than ICE cars. So I think what we're seeing is that EVs, even before the pandemic, were holding their resale value very, very strong. Some of the highest grossing used cars right now are EVs, particularly Teslas. So understanding that and understanding that, the turn cycle or whatever you want to call it on an EV is a lot longer. People keep them anywhere from 5 to 7 years. Um, that that psychology is changing now. So I think you're going to see sustained higher values on EVs even going into the future. I think even as inventories open up, as the chip crisis and all the other parts crises, you hear about the chip crisis, right? But there's a lot of componentry right now that's backed up. It's not just semiconductors, but as that loosens up and new car inventories increase, I think you're still going to see sustained higher values for EVs, particularly Teslas.
Well, I do have to say that you just picked a new term for when the autonomous driven commercial transport vehicles start hitting the road. Then you're it's not going to be a semi truck driver. He's going to be a semiconductor.
Nice, nice. Well, I tell you what, if you really want to throw the ball far into the future, I believe that automobile manufacturers ultimately are going to be supplying cars, not selling cars. I think transportation as a service is going to take over in about a decade. People aren't going to buy cars anymore. They're going to call cars. You don't buy an aircraft to go to New York. You go to the airport and you get on somebody else's. And sooner or later, if supply meets demand, where you can get a car very quickly, nicely, cleanly, and get where you need to go, I think basically automotive sales model is going to change to an automotive supply model, and transportation as a service is basically going to take over the whole space. So if you're going to make money in this business, make it in the next 10 years.
Well, actually, very interesting. That reminds me of an old Stallone movie. In the future, when he was a cop, and there was Sandra Bullock was with him, and
Yes,
and they found
yes.
this old display where there was an old Cutlass 442. And anyway, moving along, enough of the jokes. But seeing as how we're talking about the conductors and supply problems, that shall end. We know that's going to end. And it's very easy to answer my question that I'm going to ask here with, well, of course they're going to drop. But what do you predict will really happen to used car prices when new vehicles start flooding into the market? And, as soon as they start building these things, the incentives are going to start coming and they're going to be crazy. My original notes here said increase it to the level of 2 years ago. I think they're going to get worse when all of a sudden their storage lots are filled up, like the thing you see on your Facebook ads on Facebook. But Tommy, what do you think is going to happen to prices when all of a sudden a dealer with room for 400 vehicles has suddenly got 800, and there's another 600 in the pipeline?
Yeah, I don't know when that all of a sudden gonna happen though. Will it really be all of a sudden, or will it be a gradual growth? I don't. If it was all of a sudden, there'll be a tremendous drop in wholesale prices and tremendous drop in what dealers can sell those cars for. And so if they have a lot of inventory, if they haven't been managing the inventory closely, then they're going to be in really deep trouble. And, even today, even though that they're able to sell most anything for any amount of money, it seems at times, the really good ones out there, and if you talk to dealers, this is easy to pick up on. The really good ones have great discipline about managing the days that they'll allow a car to stay in their inventory. And so I think those dealers will always be okay. If the market got flooded today and you're managing your inventory well and you're not letting crap age on you, it's not going to be a problem. It really won't. So the good dealers will be fine. But if there was all of a sudden a slug of new cars, the wholesale value of used cars and the retail value of used cars is going to go down. But I don't think it'll be a slug, but maybe so. I don't know. I think it'd be gradual.
I think it's not going to be as big a problem for the dealerships as it's going to be for the poor guy that paid 20 grand over on a Cadillac Escalade that's now flipped like Yeah.
Yeah.
When they go to trade it in for their Tesla and discover that the 108-month finance that somebody roped them into, that they now owe, they're upside down by 40 grand.
Yep, they're flipped like Cirque du Soleil in their car. Well, there you go. Have a nice day.
Yeah,
Here's
I'm on a Facebook used car group, and I don't remember the exact details, so I'm gonna, it'll be a little sketchy. But there was a car that just got wholesaled. It was bought at auction, and it was I think it was a Nissan Pathfinder, and window sticker on it was X, and it sold at auction. It was a 2018 model, sold at auction for like $2,000 over the original window sticker.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Now, if they're lucky enough to sell that car, like you just pointed out, Brent, that person's gonna, when they wake up, they're just gonna be killed in that vehicle, whoever buys it, when the market changes.
Yeah, you don't want to come out of that ether and go to trade that in, that's for sure.
Well, I have to say, guys, that one thing up here that some people have learned badly on wholesale values is with the fluctuating Canadian to American dollar, a lot of Canadian guys have jumped into, and ladies, pardon me, Sam, have jumped into exporting. And a few of them are saying, hey, why don't I just run the cars down to the States, let them sit in quote unquote quarantine, because I have to sit there for 30 days. And then I'll sell them and I don't have to wait for my money from somebody else. And a few of them, when the dollar fluctuated, there were some big fluctuations over the last few years. They were sitting holding the bags for millions of dollars just because they got their butt burned. But so Brent, the thing, so do you? My opinion is there's three letters that could affect the flooding of vehicles as soon as they're supplied. UAW. But do you think we could be facing a flood of new car vehicles? And obviously, they're suddenly not going to be able to build 1 million vehicles overnight. However, they can run plants up to now 3 shifts, which they're probably down to 1. Do you think we're going to look at a big change in use or a gradual change?
Well, the issue becomes that people have to manage their inventory with a view towards the future, right? And the reality is that people are driving a lot less. They're needing cars a lot less. They have to really not look at the traditional things that they've looked at for how many vehicles they're going to stock. And if the manufacturer tries to push too many vehicles, on their franchise dealerships, and they end up sitting on these cars, it's going to be very problematic. I think I don't see a hockey stick of inventory. I see more of just a gradual increase in inventories, because otherwise it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the manufacturer. It doesn't help the franchise dealer, and it certainly isn't going to help the market. I think a gradual return to inventory levels is in the cards, and I think that's the only way to really manage things. Both from the used car values to new car sales.
Hey, Brent makes a good point there, in that if the manufacturers drop a ton of cars on the deals all of a sudden, next thing they got to do is come out with incentives to get them gone. And that's the last thing they really want to do. So hopefully they won't. They will, but hopefully they won't.
Well, I mean, sorry. Incentives went kind of nuts after 9/11, right? You remember 72 month zero financing, 84 month zero. Everything kind of went to hell after September 11th from, in the automotive industry for that. And I think if the manufacturers are wise and the franchise dealerships are wise, they're going to basically try and come out of this slowly and sensibly and adopt more and more of a one price retail model. And I think if they can do that, and they can gradually get people used to the fact that they're not going to have, these huge incentives and these huge markdowns, I think the market will recover smoothly and very well.
What do you guys think about this order model that it looks like Ford's going towards and other manufacturers are trying to go towards as we transition here? Do you think that's going to hold water?
I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, when I was at Tesla, that's precisely what we did. We basically built to order. We had some vehicles in market for people that simply had to have one right now, but for the most part, it was built to order, and it was a very effective system as long as you got the shipping to do it, and you basically set the mindset and the expectation of you're going to get exactly what you want, delivered right to you, built for you. So if you can set that expectation, I think
what Ian meant though is that Ford's starting to offer extra incentives to order
do it
a vehicle.
that way. Oh,
Because like my feeling on watching this too is the fact that I think what they're doing is they're looking at their customers buying a 2018 F-150 from a dealer used for the price of a new, and they want to get them out of that market. And so now they're throwing money at it.
You know, throwing money at stuff is never really a long-term solution, right? I think helping, concentrating more on changing the mindset of people and changing their expectations is better than throwing money at things. But that's my own soapbox.
Yeah, but we know it's better. But what is it really going to happen?
Yeah,
right?
well, that's true. There's this world we live in and the world we want, right? And the world we live in is people are enticed by the big discounts and everything. I've never been terribly enticed by big discounts because I always thought, okay, what if I would have bought it a month ago? Were you going to hose me for $8,000 more? Yeah, thanks for the big discount. So I've never been a fan of that. It devalues the product in my mind when you start
because you've been a
discounting like
Tesla guy for 10 years.
I know, it's terrible, but it works out well. You should see the stress leave people's faces when you tell them you're a one price retailer. It just their whole demeanor changes, and it becomes more about, okay, let's build the value in this product and let's take care of you. And I loved it. I loved it.
One thing the pandemic has done, and maybe it will carry over, is it's programmed the public to kind of get the concept down that we don't really negotiate anymore. I mean, you talk to anybody that's been out shopping for cars and are getting rid of the shop, it seems they have come to some understanding that they realize there's no real discounts going on out there, and they're going to have to pay the sticker or more. And maybe if we're smart, not that we will be, but if we're smart, we've laid the groundwork for that. So moving forward, maybe we can, work on enhancing that business model of, look, here's what it is, this is the price, and pay the price and be happy.
Well, if we're in that model, then and cars are less of a commodity, right? Then people can actually go to their local dealership again, and people can get that local experience and service and build a relationship, right? If it's a commodity and people are willing to go 200 miles away to save another $50, then basically there's no relationship there with your salesperson. There's no relationship there with your service department. I think honestly a one price system actually enhances the experience for everybody because they're able to actually build a relationship with their local dealer. I've wanted to see that for 20 years. I've been on that soapbox so long. I have soap dust on my feet.
Although I have to say on that, with the pandemic, what has happened is people are circumventing their local dealer because they're going online and finding one 1,500 miles away because they actually have the vehicle.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that could upset that entire apple cart now, because in my opinion, that they could start going online and they're looking for a blue F-150 Lightning. Of course, this is 5 years from now, and there's the blue one, and it turns out it's from a dealer on the other side of the country, and they go, no problem, I'll call my guy at Ship Your Car Now and ship it off to you.
Well, I was for a short period with Land Rover, Range Rover, and they have very distinct zones. And if you're a Rover franchise, you can't sell to somebody that's in somebody else's zone. So basically, you have to sell within your area. And I think if you can set something up like that, and then just order the car for them that they want, I think then you can maintain that relationship and that local relationship and that consultative nature of the sales process rather than just becoming a commodity. I think Rover actually has managed that really, really well.
Yeah, that's for sure. Ian.
Yeah, I mean, I'm noticing as I talk to dealers and I look at statistics, specifically on the used car side, being that there's no new car inventory or minimal, that actually used car inventory is more of a draw for traffic and leads than it's ever been before, because people are looking for a car they can get right now. Yeah. And it's kind of similar to real estate in a lot of ways there, where the person who has the listings or the inventory is the one actually driving the sales. I think that's interesting, just because historically that may or may not have been the case, and maybe but it's very interesting, because I think it's something we're going to be in for a while. What's your thought on sort of is there a bad used car piece of inventory to buy today?
Wow. Yeah, go for it, Tommy.
Go for it, Tommy. What do you think?
Are you saying are there bad models out there that you should not buy today? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And there's always that. I mean, you got to know what you're doing. You got to know what is going to sell in your market. So, I mean, I don't think I could point to one car and say there's probably something we could all come to some agreement on. But it always depends on the market and the demand in your area. And so I don't know that I don't know if I could come up with a vehicle that's a bad unit to buy. Every store has units that don't do well in their lot. I don't care what the market. Every store has units that, for whatever reason, they just don't do well. And so if you're at your dealership, you got to be smart enough to, be getting those cars really right so that you can get rid of them. But I can't think of any car that's a bad car to buy. Every model out there could be a bad car to buy, depending on its condition and what's happened to it. So I don't know.
Rock and roll.
I'll tell you, a bad model nobody should buy. Nobody should buy a Tesla.
Wow. Wow. See, I was just starting to like you. Now I gotta reel that back.
No, just kidding. I couldn't think of anything else.
They are certainly becoming the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I had somebody reach out to me for help buying a Range Rover Velar. And this is the point you made, Brent, and actually, Tommy, you're talking about one prices. And they went to the Range Rover dealer, and the guy said, sorry, I can't give you a discount. He calls me and says, can you get me a deal? I said, no. And I said, I'm happy to try, but I can tell you no. And so I called a couple of people I knew, and they said, and they were obviously nice. Look, buddy, it's got nothing to do with me not being a jerk. It's called, I got three. And he said, if we didn't have part of our dealer agreement wasn't strong, which you mentioned too, Brent, we could get $5,000 more for it. So I told that to the customer, and the next day he ordered a Model Y. Because we said, what the heck? He says, it's all happily wait.
Nice.
So that's a very interesting circumstance, and I do think that they're going to change everything. Well, they are changing everything right now. The only problem is.
Go ahead.
I have a lot of friends that reach out to me from time to time about, they know I'm in the car business, and they'll say, I'm looking for XYZ, and can you help me get a good price? And I explained to them, kind of like you were just talking about, that you're not going to, quote, get a deal. I say to them, the most important thing is the way you get treated. And so if I'm going to send you to a dealer, it's going to be someone that I know is going to treat you well. And I think the customer experience thing, it will continue to be more and more important than the price of the car, because the price of the cars are cars. They are what they are. And if you save $500 on a car, it's really not worth it if you get treated like crap and you have a bad buying experience and they're not going to take care of you when you come back. So it's not worth that sort of saving. So I think we all have to continue to educate the public that way and make sure people have a good experience. I'm always frustrated when I hear about someone having a bad buying experience, because I almost thought that, and I know I'm naive about this, but I almost thought that the industry was kind of past that most people really get, and they have a culture and they get it and they treat people well. But oddly enough, it doesn't always happen that way. And I'm sometimes going, God, how could they still be living in the dark ages? But it happens.
You touched on a very interesting point there, Tommy. One thing I always used to preach, and everybody knows a story of somebody parked in front of a dealership with a giant lemon on the roof of their car, and how they had a bad car and everything else. And everyone I've looked into, which has only been 10 or 20 of them, when you research it down, they got the deal of the century. It was a smoking deal. And so, of course, I remember somebody had a 7 Series BMW parked in front of the BMW dealer. And it turned out that he bought the car for like invoice from a dealer in Manitoba. And, when he got it back, it was a lot of problems. And they parked in front of the one dealer because that was the person they picked for service. So,
yeah. I've often said that, one of the things when I was training salespeople years ago, I used to say, who's the happier client, the one that paid $2,500 gross, or the guy that left you with a ham sandwich worth of profit? And I'm going to tell you, it's the guy that paid $2,500 in gross, because he was treated well. He had a good experience. He felt good about his trade-in. He felt good about his payment. You got the product for him, you took care of him, you knew your stuff, you put him down the road, and he was happy. The guy that left you with a ham sandwich worth of profit is probably miserable with the car because he thinks he still left $2,500 on the table, which he
absolutely
didn't. And his whole full ownership experience, because he's super commoditized the whole thing. He's not about relationship at all. He couldn't care less. Couldn't care less if he left there and the salesperson's kids starved to death. So the person that actually paid some gross is usually the happier person, because their life isn't a commodity. Their life is a relationship based exchange between people. And I think at the end of the day, you're never going to make somebody that's hyper commoditized in exchange have a relationship with you. So don't even try. He's just
we're
not
actually
that, he's just
going
not that into you.
we're going down a very interesting road here, getting a little bit away from used cars. But
Sorry,
when we talk about it, oh no, please, this show is alive. It's a living organism.
Nice.
We're talking about experience. Tommy's talked about experience, and of course, the picture that we put in our ad here was from used cars and our friend Mr. Russell, and doing that typical used car thing.
Great.
But when you look at a salesperson at a traditional car dealer and at Tesla, when you walk into Tesla, it's like walking into the Apple store.
Yeah.
Except you don't see a 45 or 50-year-old person wearing that shirt. Everybody seems to be 25.
25. You went into an older store. They're usually about 18 now. No, I'm kidding. It's true. It's true.
But is that experience that good?
Well, it really, sadly, this is the one negative thing I'm going to say about Tesla on this show, and the experience level has gone down. They've turned the store experience into more of kind of almost like a clerk experience. You know, you go in and they basically take a copy of your driver's license, hand you a key, point you at the car, and you go on your own test drive. So when I left Tesla, I left because I saw it going more towards just kind of a genius bar without any real sales, and they didn't need me, at that point, right? The thing that I find a little bit disconcerting is the fact that as more automakers have their come to market with EVs, they're going to be teaching their salespeople to sell against Tesla. They're going to be teaching their sales professionals how to sell against Tesla. And Tesla, if they maintain this kind of clerk model where they just take your order and give your paperwork and hand you your keys and point you at the car, they're going to have a hard time maintaining market share when there are serious professional car salespeople out there that are trained to sell against them. So I hope that they work on the retail experience, because they're going to need to.
Sure. Tommy, your opinion on that?
No, I can't add any more than I've already had about that. I just think the experience is so important.
It is.
And that's the only thing that's going to separate, a Chevrolet is a Chevrolet, a Nissan is a Nissan. The difference is going to be how they get treated in the stores. I think dealers need to, again, this is the time that dealers need to be spending money to improve their whole operation and how they do things, and not wait till they have to do it. Right now, they're making plenty of money. They're selling cars, but now's the time to improve that customer experience and invest some money in training and whatever they need to do to make that happen.
So do you, Tommy, to leverage on that, I mean, do you feel that that's the biggest challenge facing the used car business, is the training piece? Is like, I can buy a used car anywhere, why should I buy it here? Is that what you think is the biggest challenge?
No, I think that the biggest challenge right now for dealers, and it will always be, is just finding the inventory. And some dealers are doing a much better job of trying to buy cars from the public and that sort of thing. I think that's the biggest challenge. But once we have the inventory, now what happens when the customer shows up? So there's things that I guess are connected, but the biggest challenge will continue to be to get the cars. And some dealers have really good systems on their websites and processes in place in the service write-up area to try to get customers to let them, put a figure on their car. I really like the VinQ product. I'm not here to sell products because I don't work for VinQ. I like the VinQ product, but there's other ones out there that are similar that allow the customer to get a self-appraisal by putting 3 pieces of information in there and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's the biggest challenge, and it will continue to be. But then once we get the inventory, the next challenge is that customer experience and making sure that, we got that right.
Yeah, thanks, man. And Brent, I mean, you were obviously on the used car side of Tesla. Was there anything they were doing different on the used car side that maybe other dealers can leverage on as they sell used EVs or even other cars?
The thing that's unique with Tesla is the fact that they build cars pretty much to a certain spec and standard, right? So if you're looking for a Model Y, if you're looking for a Model 3, whatever, you're pretty much looking for one of two or three variants of the car. So it really isn't that difficult. Then it just comes down to miles, color, availability, price point. You know, a long time ago, we set up online self-evaluations of the cars. When I was with the used car department, we set that up. And at first I thought it was a crazy idea. I'll be absolutely frank with you. They came to me with the idea and I was like, I think it's kind of nuts that people self-appraise their cars. We're going to get all kinds of rashed up rims and issues when we take these cars in. And it turned out that the overwhelming majority of people were fairly honest about the assessment of their cars. Actually, they tended to be a little bit more negative about the actual condition of their cars than when we actually received them. So it kind of reinforced a little bit of that whole, oh, humanity doesn't suck. But so we ended up being in a good place, and we ended up our used cars that we took in, we ended up even or profitable on them. So it worked out rather well. But we basically started that as an OEM to put values on cars we really hadn't even seen, with a handful of photographs and customer statements, and we ended up in an okay place. The only thing that Tesla doesn't do is resell their gas engine cars. They put them all through the chute. So, if you're looking for a good place to get used cars, you should probably hook up with Tesla Remarketing, because they take in thousands of them every month and they don't sell a one of them.
Although I have to say, in this current market, they're auctioning them all and they're getting more than retail for them.
Oh yeah,
Well,
yeah. Life is good.
more than the old retail.
Yeah, life is good. Yeah, if you're sending stuff through the chute right now, life is good for you. But yeah, end of the game is the customer experience with Tesla, and especially when it comes to like trade-ins and stuff like that. Very low pressure, very matter of fact, very this is it. If it makes sense for you, let's rock. And it's very disarming.
One comment I will have to make, sorry, Tommy, is in a couple of weeks we have an EV show coming up, and this is Brent, I believe you're joining us, Phil, and it's going to be exciting because this whole conversation is crazy, and there's a startup here in Canada that's coming to the States too, called Imperium Motors, and we're going to have their CEO on it. It's a Chinese brand, and it's going to be very interesting on that. I'm sorry to steal from this. I'm going to be leaving. I have to go to my appointment now. Ian will take over. I just wanted to thank everybody for being here. Tommy, we appreciate you spending the time, and sorry to talk about EVs around you, because it's a thing to learn, but it's a great thing. So I thank everybody. Continue chatting, keep the talk going, and we'll be in touch next week. So long.
Yeah. So Tommy, you had something you wanted to say there, so go ahead.
No, I was going to build a little bit on what Brent said about when they were putting numbers on people's cars and the people didn't lie. I was a Toyota dealer back in 2002, and there was a Toyota dealer and a group out of the Greensboro, North Carolina area called Flow, FLOW. Yeah. And back in 2002, the internet was just starting to happen, and they really got big time back then in putting numbers on people's cars based on the customer calling them up and just giving them information. And it was stunning how very few times they got burned. And yeah, they were really, they were doing this way before anybody else even thought about doing something like that. So, all in all, they're like Brent said, the customer's pretty honest with you, and they'll shoot you straight. Not a big deal.
Well, because they don't want to get there at the desk and then have this uncomfortable, exchange when the car isn't what they represented. So yeah, no, it worked out really well for us. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to customer experience. I just wanted to say one thing before we wrap, and that is EVs are just cars. Okay. And they're just cars. They're different kinds of cars, and they take a little bit more sales acumen to sell, and they take a little bit more just information to sell. But end game is EVs are just cars. And if you can teach your salespeople how to sell them properly, if you can teach them the acronyms and how to explain them to people and get them over the hump, you can make a lot of money selling EVs. Right now, the grosses on EVs are just stupid. So it's definitely a good market to be in, but I don't believe in the whole EV ICE car. They're cars, and people just need to understand them, know how to sell them, and know how to get people comfortable with them. That's all she wrote.
The one thing I think EVs need moving forward, because they're really fast. I mean, I've ridden in a Tesla, and this sucker's fast, right? So you're going to have sports cars evolving in these EVs. They're going to have to come up with a sound system for the mufflers to make them like because people buy muscle cars because they like the sounds of those big old V8s and how they got them
Nice.
all souped up. And so EVs really do need to come with some kind of way of making noise.
I love pulling up next to a 5.0 Mustang and just absolutely eating his lunch. It's just so much fun. This big old SUV pulls up next to you and just leaves you in the dust. The thing I like about it not making any noise is people are very territorial in traffic and they like to close the hole, not let you pass. And when I stomp on the pedal on my Model X, you don't hear anything. Just all of a sudden it's and I'm in front of you. And it's like, oh, I couldn't close the door because I didn't hear the rumble and roar and the downshift
Right.
and everything. So yeah, it's kind of nice.
Well,
Kind of nice.
I think that Ford Mach E has an option. I did a test drive in one, and I think it has an option for some form of sound.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
think
Well,
so.
there you go.
But the other thing that was interesting is we had Steve Dunn in his shop in San Francisco area where they do a lot of modifications. And I think there's an opportunity for shops like that not only take fast cars and make them faster, but also to do some recording and sell that as sort of like almost like a ringtone for your car kind of deal. I mean, I think there's an option there that is quite interesting because just because you don't have that sound doesn't mean you don't have a good sound system. So that doesn't mean that you couldn't have that sound inside the car. Because it was
That's true.
we had on that show about sound and car people, which was kind of interesting. If you haven't checked it out, it's the Performance Car Show. The first one was kind of interesting because they were taking I think it was an Audi A8, and the guy is dropping another couple $100,000 in it to upgrade it for racing, I think. But it was interesting the discussion we had specifically around performance cars because his initial company was doing chip upgrades to BMWs back in the 80s before he sold it to Magnaflow. So it was kind of interesting that whole conversation around sound. And we did have that around EVs. It was kind of interesting. So
You got to understand that Bubba wants his pickup truck to sound like a pickup truck. Just remember that.
I tell people if I want my Model X to make noise, I'll crank up the 16 speaker stereo with Baby Got Back.
Yeah.
You'll hear me from a block away.
definitely check out that Mach E because I believe it does have that option.
That's cool.
It may.
I believe it does because I seem to remember seeing it on the screen in the Mach E.
Yeah, there are people thinking that it's a good safety feature too. Loud pipes save lives, and they figure that cars should make noise too. Yeah, I guess there's some credence to it, but remember, I like the silence.
Rednecks are still going to buy vehicles, so don't forget that, okay?
That is very, very true.
Any final thoughts? We got about 5 minutes left. Go ahead.
I got nothing. Thank you for having us.
No problem. Brent, you got any final thoughts on the I guess resurrection of Volkswagen as an electric car maker?
You know what? I love seeing that. I actually know one of their top execs here in the U.S. He was a former Tesla exec, and I like it. I think they're really doing a great job. I think they're going to be a major force. I've said for many years now they're going to be basically two OEMs that are going to take this over. It's going to be Volkswagen. It's going to be Ford. And I'm really pleased to see that I wasn't wrong, but no, it's really good to see them coming full bore. I think it's an excellent move for the planet in general, but also for them as an automaker to just fully embrace it and be. I mean, they don't have the first mover advantage, but they can have a real strong second mover advantage, which is almost as good. And they've got a lot of name recognition. People that like V-dubs, and they've liked V-dubs since their first microbus back in the '60s. People dig those cars. And if they dig those cars and they can bring out a great EV, God bless them and keep them. It's good for all of us.
Yeah, I think you might even see an electric bus. There's talk.
I would love to see that actually. And by the way, we cover all EVs, so we've had some ID4s come in already through XCare and everything. So it's been fun to see the market opening up. I don't think that Tesla's in any danger. I think just the market in general can absorb more OEMs, and I think it's going to be great. It's going to be good for people to have choice, and it's going to be good for Tesla because they're going to have to come to the table with a better customer experience. I think that's kind of waned a little bit in the last couple of years, and I think when there's more wolves at the door, they're going to have to up their game. So I think it's going to be good for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I know there was some stuff on the weekend about Lucid basically bragging that they have more range, and So there's definitely going to be some battles, and I think it's just like everything in the car business. I mean, I think it just makes a better product for everybody, whether it be
Absolutely.
Honda or Toyota or Nissan or whoever it is. I just really I was impressed with what Ford was doing, but more importantly, when you look at the other manufacturers who are all seem to be coming to the table, even the high performance companies. I know Porsche did. I think they have a GT that they're playing around with. So we'll see what happens. But the Taycan has outsold the 911, which is quite interesting. So I think you
Indeed.
will see more options for sure.
I think it's a brave new world, and I'm glad to be stepping into it. I think there's going to be some great times ahead, and I think the automotive industry is in for some real surprises. I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Well, have yourself a great week. Thanks for coming on, and the recording will be live later today.
God bless you all. Thank you.
Bye.